I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Aleksander Czeszkiewicz. If you'd like to help with our film fundraiser, we have links in the description. We're aiming for a release roughly 6 months from now. We're in the editing process. If you make a donation of $100 or more, you get a film credit as well as a pre-release copy of the film. Also, be sure and watch my previous Occult Louisiana is on Tubi, Roku, Apple, and a few more. Doors of Perception is on Amazon Prime, and a free service called Relay. We are booking guests for March and April. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome back to the show Aleksander Czeszkiewicz. He is an author and researcher that came to the conclusion that our ancient ancestors were telling a completely different story about our oldest history. Aleksander, welcome back. How you doing?
Thanks for having me on again. I think it's the third or fourth time. Always enjoy your podcast, so thanks again. I'm fine, thank you, and hope you're doing well too.
I am doing great, and I really enjoyed our previous discussions. You've done incredible research into our hidden ancient past. Today we're going to continue with some of your recent work. As you stated in your messages earlier, you're feeling a little vindicated about the once conspiratorial information you've presented, which more and more as time goes on is being proven true. So it's very exciting. You also have some surprises for us. But before we get into that, remind the audience just a little bit about yourself and let them know how they can find more.
My name is Aleksander Czeszkiewicz. I'm a researcher and author from Poland. My book is Deja Vu Has Everything Already Been, and you can find it on Amazon's US, UK, Canada, and many more. And I think the best way to find me is just copy and paste my name and surname, and you'll find me on plenty of social media, podcast interviews, and stuff like that. And my main areas of research are lost history of humanity, but also, the entire universe, how it works, metaphysics, spirituality. So I want to discover the biggest secrets of the entire reality.
Tell us a little bit about some of the information that you're feeling most vindicated about, some of the exciting things that you've been looking into.
Yes, as I'm recently researching more and more of the news stuff, news from the academic world, discoveries in history, archaeology, I see that what even myself, I was ridiculed for some of the things I was talking about. These things are being proven correct again and again. And I see the more I research recently academic stuff, the more confirmation I see in what I've already been talking about for years now. So I think it's very good, and just as always, we conspiracy theorists have been talking that, it only takes time to show that conspiracy theory, particular one, was right. I see more and more evidence that both, alternative historians, as they were called, conspiracy theorists, of course, in brackets, are proven to be right. And just, as I, even years ago, was posing questions that our history may be older, the basic ones, even not controversial ones, that everything may be older, civilization, maybe Atlantis truly existed. These things were even 5 to 10 years ago, considered in the academic, in the mainstream, pseudoscience, something completely wrong, I'm idiot or something. But right now I see that we are even the academic world is pushing both the roots of humanity, but also roots of civilization back by, plenty of times, by tens of thousands of years. And I remember in my book 5 years ago, I stated that anatomically modern humans, back there it was 200,000 years ago. 200,000 years ago of the existence of anatomically modern humans. Right now, it's conservatively accepted that it's 315,000 approximately, but it's also accepted that we do not know the exact date, and probably our species diverged from other hominids about 500,000 years ago. And what is interesting, recently I was reading some academic book from 2004 about prehistory of humanity, and in 2004 it was stated, I was laughing very hard about what I was reading, that anatomically modern humans appeared 50,000 years ago. So you see, 2004 it was 50,000, 5 years ago it was 200,000, and now it's between 300 and 500,000 years ago. Wow. Which is, taking back a few times, by hundreds of thousands of years, the roots of humanity. But the same with civilization. Again, for many of decades already, even before Graham Hancock and others, people were speculating maybe Atlantis existed 9,000 years before Solon, so about, 9,600 BC, but everyone was, no, we have no evidence that there was any kind of civilization or something during these old times. And last December, I saw a podcast, I think Lex Fridman podcast, with a conservative Assyriologist, Irvin Finkel, and he says that he believes that writing appeared 9,000 years BC. It was, his theory, and he shows to support this theory. And, it was crazy because it was a completely conservative person, within the academic realm, telling you that writing did not appear in ancient Sumer 4,000 years BC, but 9,000 years BC. So, twice as much as we thought about. And he said that probably the evidence for it haven't survived, but we found at Göbekli Tepe stones with inscriptions over them that, in his opinion, were used as some kind of stamps for clay tablets, and that's how, they were writing things down. So, we are pushing, even within the academic realm, by thousands of years, roots of everything, and recently I've been learning more and more about it because, if academics are stating such things that were completely out of, their minds 10 years ago, I was looking for, more of such stuff. And I even, realized that the roots of civilization and everything we know about, and we know about the, academic version of our history, is completely being changed right now, during our own lives, our own eyes, which is crazy in my opinion. And from what I've found recently, I think that maybe in 20, maybe in 30 years, Atlantis could be just mainstream theory that yes, about 10,000 BC there existed such and such a civilization. And for instance, my biggest thing in deja vu back there, for which I was ridiculed, was I start my book with this idea of how long it takes for a civilization to be destroyed, to decay, for instance, when there is a catastrophe, a comet impact or something. But also, what if, we left our civilization, maybe we vanished completely, pandemic or something, how long it would take? And, I calculated plenty of different things, plenty of different materials, like skyscrapers, cars, day-to-day materials of day-to-day use. But also, I speculated about different kinds of things of advanced civilization, like for instance things in the cosmos, all the garbage from different kind of satellites, etc. And I found out that it just takes about a few thousand years, maybe up to 10-20,000 years for a civilization to vanish completely. And I was ridiculed for many years. And I remember I was also telling that even from recorded history from 5,000 years ago, from ancient Egypt, ancient Sumer, we actually probably do not have many of the things because things are decaying, things are being destroyed over time. So what we know about ancient Sumer and ancient Egypt is like 10% of everything that survived till our times, or even less than that. And I was ridiculed for that idea. But recently, again, when I was, more into this mainstream stuff, I realized that finally, when I started reading highly, academic books, very, very very, very, exceptional stuff, not like just basic things what, the bankers want to tell you in the media to debunk Atlantis and any kind of lost civilization theory. I found out that, yes, true academics who are honest with themselves say that, okay, we do not know almost anything about ancient Sumer, ancient Egypt. What we know is like 5, maybe 10% of everything that survived. So I was, wait a minute, I was talking about it already, and, plenty of, again, debunkers, people who say that they are the mainstream, they are, the truth, etc., says that I'm wrong. But actually, I found out that these are just shouters, all these debunkers and all the people who try to say, oh, science knows all the answers and we are stupid, tinfoil hat people. But even they, it's just like in politics, a camp. Even they are not representing the mainstream, because mainstream, okay, maybe in many cases very conservative, may say no, maybe there was no Atlantis, but they say that we do not know much about our past. Or even they say, when you truly read about methodology of history, archaeology, you see that they accept that, okay, we'll probably never know, within the realm of science, of history, archaeology, we'll never know the past. Maybe only if we know we're time traveling or something, or using psychic abilities to, search for the past. But within the, materialistic side of science, we'll never know the truth, because, what survived to our times may be even less than 5%. And what I've been talking about, that there are huge possibilities even before anatomically modern humans, within these, let's say, 200,000-300,000 years of anatomically modern humans. And I said that there are plenty of things that maybe even, giants existed. Who knows if, there weren't giants that we haven't found officially, their remains yet. And there are, of course, plenty of stories that we found. But let's say that we haven't found the evidence for giants yet. But it doesn't mean that they didn't exist. And we find more and more even hominids who are coexisting with us. So yes, crazy things that, conspiracy theorists are turning out to be right all along.
Speaking of conspiracy theories turning out to be true, not to get too far off, but with the Epstein file release, it's coming out that Epstein and certain powerful groups were also interested in archaeology and expeditions to find evidence of hidden artifacts and things about our ancient past that they were trying to uncover before anyone else. It's all interconnected, and it's fascinating to see this information surfacing right now, and I never thought I'd see anything like this in my lifetime, so I think we're at a very important point. Yes. In your messages earlier, you also said that you were studying history at your local university in Poland and found some interesting things about that.
Yes, I started last year, so just a few months ago. I just went, I was 22 right now, 23 almost, so I went just, for bachelor degree in history. We have free education system here in Poland, so I say, well, it will be useful for me to have even more sources and more access to sources, to libraries, and right now I have tons of access, even to original ancient texts, artifacts, and stuff like that, which is very useful even in my personal life. And I was actually positively surprised, because again, that's why before that I mentioned that I was heavily focused on studying the academic stuff, because finally at this level I could say it's completely different than what these shouters and debunkers are trying to tell you. True historians, true archaeologists, people who are just working for that, and may not be very that, oh, Atlantis didn't exist and something, say that who knows if Atlantis existed or not. We haven't found the evidence yet, let's say, maybe a few things, but, we haven't fully discovered, this lost civilization, but they are very open to possibilities. I even gave a few copies of my book to a few people, a few doctors and professors, and they said that, yeah, maybe, they as academics do not agree with everything, but they say that it's, very cool to explore such topics, and, such topics need to be explored. So I was very positively surprised. I got a private study schedule, so they said, okay, I love this topic, so I can choose what interests me. Soon I will be starting learning ancient Hebrew, ancient Greek. I picked the topics. I will go mostly into the ancient past, ancient Middle East, and stuff like that. And again, I was positively shocked, because as in the beginning of the study course, we had this first lessons about methodology of history, and how history and archaeology and prehistory history as a science works, and I was surprised that, it's completely different than what, the bankers are saying to you, that no, Atlantis 100% haven't existed. We even were discussing the pyramids, and, everyone agreed, and, we found even academic books about that we will probably never know, within the academic realm how the pyramids were built, because we just, have the evidence for the building, like, some kind of instructions or something like that, didn't survive to our time. So even the pyramids are still the mystery, and people try to tell you that, no, we know 100% how the pyramids were built. No, they do not know actually within the academic circles how they did that. They had plenty of theories. Some are more right, some are more wrong, some may even have grains of truth in them, but still we do not know. And this is the biggest thing, I think, that we do not know much. And I was very into, we started with ancient Mesopotamia also, so I researched Sumer a lot, and everything from the beginning of times. And what is interesting is, again, this idea what I've been talking about for years, of this deja vu that civilizations may have been before us, that not many things survive thousands of years, is that, for instance, in ancient Sumer there are plenty, of different periods, but for instance, from one period of ancient Sumerian history, in which there were about 30 huge cities, Sumerian. But from this particular period, we have only evidence when it comes to clay tablets, and there are hundreds of thousands of them from this period, but only from 2 cities that were completely burned down. So just by accident, because clay tablets made from clay, when there was a war and they burned down completely these 2 cities, to the ashes, these clay tablets hardened, because clay, they were just baked. And we have like 90% of all the texts from this period just from these 2 out of 30 cities, which were completely destroyed. So imagine, even when it comes to, the known history, how little we know. And actually, true scientists who are not opinionated, not political about it, say, yeah, that we do not know much about it, that there may have been plenty of more things when it comes to everything. So I was again shocked. The same, how very often conservative and bureaucratic science is, and they are telling that it shouldn't be like that. At least some of the scholars are telling like that, for instance, we know officially that ancient Sumer started about 3500 BC, but actually thousands of years, like 2 or at least 1,500 years before that, ancient Sumer was almost as big. But just because we haven't found any kind of evidence of using of writing by 1,000 years before what we consider to be the beginning of Sumer, we cannot say it was civilization, because our definition of civilization needs to have writing system, and we need to discover it. If we haven't discovered it, we cannot say like that. But it was even, I would say, about 1,000 years before what we know about Sumerians. They were even bigger than in the later times that we say they started, because they were more unified, the architecture was there. So Sumer, even it starts to be commonly accepted that ancient Sumer may be thousands of years older. The same, for instance, here in Europe, I found some new stuff. Again, no one talks about them, from local stuff from Eastern Europe, that here in Romania, Serbia, Bulgaria, a little part of Ukraine, there have been pre-civilizations predating ancient Sumer, again by thousands of years, and the cities here were about the same size as ancient Sumerian cities, because ancient Sumerian cities had about 30,000 to 50,000 people at one city. And here we found cities of about 30,000 people here in Eastern Europe, about 8,000 to 2,000 years before the Sumerians. And they used chariots. It's actually the first evidence ever, on the entire planet for using a chariot. They were using it with oxen, maybe not horses, but still, advanced society, very advanced society. But again, we found something that looks like script, but just because we cannot yet decipher it, because, how can we do that if, the civilization is so old? And, in the case of ancient Sumer, it was easier for us because even, thousands of years later in late antiquity, these languages were in similar languages were used, the cuneiform was the 3,000 years after the Sumerians, or 2,000 years after the Sumerians. That's why we were able to, at least, again, not fully, but to a large extent, decode the ancient Sumerian script. But in this case, it's completely isolated civilization in Eastern Europe, and we have some evidence of something that looks like script. But just because we cannot decipher it, we cannot call it a civilization. But if we could decipher this script, there would be, civilization at least 8,000 years before the Sumerians, the first one in Eastern Europe. So it shows, again, how bureaucratic, how limited, again, as in many, areas of our life, that, okay, it could be easier to say that, to do that, but we cannot because, of the rules of the bureaucracy or of some kind of ideas of people from the past, which is, I think, crazy. So again, this whole idea, because it's very interesting. Also, I was interested in how, these discoveries about our even known history, were during the time. So how we discovered Egypt, how we discovered ancient Sumer, and so on. And what's interesting is ancient Sumer, and again, in ancient Mesopotamia, there were plenty of civilizations. The Sumer is, the most famous one, but in the same place almost, there was Akkadian civilization, the Assyrians later, Babylonians, etc. And what is interesting is that until 1843, I would say, and I can provide evidence for that, that ancient Mesopotamian civilizations were all just like Atlantis, that we had texts talking about them, describing them, but we had no evidence. And everyone before 1840s was saying that no, it's just mythical, we don't care about that. And we had, in the case of Atlantis, we have a few sources, Plato, the famous one, and maybe a few other which can be called Atlantean sources. But when it came to Mesopotamia, we had plenty of sources, even within, ancient historians like Herodotus and others who were telling that, yeah, here were the great cities. But historians said, no, these were fantasies, and there were no cities. And what was also interesting is that it was similar to the case of Atlantis, that these cities, before they were excavated, they were totally, Mesopotamia was full of artificial mounds because, mud, again, it may be a little bit into conspiracy theories about mud floods, later in historical times, that, all of these ancient Mesopotamian cities, and there were, plenty of them, were in what was called tels, which are artificial mounds. And, initially people thought that, okay, these are just mounds, but they started digging into these mounds and they found out that there are ruins inside of it. So, entire cities were covered by, meters of mud, not like, let's say, this much of mud and, we can excavate it. No, by meters of mud. Similarly, actually, but in the case of Göbekli Tepe, it was covered just by ground, not like mud. But here in Mesopotamia, it was mud, which again, maybe a little bit connected to the mud flood idea, that things were, covered in mud later on. And what is interesting that, it were meters of mud. I remember, that there was excavation of about, they knew that it was period of about 2000 BC because they found some, let's say, texts, in this layer of archaeological, digging. And they found out that it was 22 meters underground. And if 2000 BC was 20 meter underground, imagine Atlantis, 9,000 or 10,000 BC, how deep it would be in all of that. So we just, it's just a peak of the iceberg, what we know. And I see that at least in some academic circles, it starts, to be the main idea that we do not know much about our past, which I'm very fascinated about that finally, because again, also with my research, with my book, I don't want to force people believe in Atlantis or you're stupid because you don't believe. No, I just want to show the possibility that there can be much more to our past and that we do not know much, because the more we learn, the more we see how little we know.
You mentioned the Sumerian kings list. This is something extremely fascinating to me, depending on what researcher you're following. They could tell you that they lived extremely long lives, hundreds, maybe thousands of years. There's debate as to how long the tablets are really describing. But do you have any thoughts on the amount of time that humans lived in that era of our ancient past?
This is an extremely interesting topic in the light of all of what I've said, because for once, if we are pushing the date of the anatomically modern humans even to 500,000 years ago, the Sumerian kings list, the famous one, in conspiracy theories, ancient aliens and so forth, because they are, extremely interesting and, look like science fiction, like a fantasy, because they are so epic in their content. And as you said, yes, it is mentioned that, particular rulers rulers, particular kings were living for even tens of thousands of years, and the Sumerian kings lists altogether go about 300 to even 400,000 years before current era, which is a long. And even 10 years ago, 20 years ago, everyone said, oh, these are just mythical, because we thought again that humans were 50,000 years old, maybe 100,000. But right now, if we are pushing things 500,000 years ago, they are becoming within, anatomically modern humans, so they possibly become real, that they are really remembering just humans. And what is also interesting is that from my research on ancient Sumer, I found that even academics are seeing more and more connections between these mythical Sumerian kings and reality, because we start, with more excavations in the, ancient Mesopotamia, we found more and more, at least mentions of particular kings, and we can date these mentions. For instance, there is a mention that this king, went into a war with this other city, and for instance, in this other city, we also found mention that yes, they were fighting. But wait a minute, this king was previously thought to be mythical, but right now we see evidence. Okay, if we have like even 2 or 3 sources telling that yes, this king was really fighting, and we can date that yes, there was a war, for instance, we see some little evidence, let's say, that survived of this war. It's that we start, to see more and more kings from this mythical list of kings. They turn out to be real, real rulers in the ancient times. So who knows, if we again are digging only a few thousand years of the Sumerian history, who knows if these legendary rulers from 50,000 years ago were also real, but we again haven't found the evidence for them yet. Maybe there was a cataclysm. What is also interesting is that in many ancient Sumerian texts, even from the oldest text in the world, the Epic of Gilgamesh, there is mentioned that Apkallu, 7 sages, 7 teachers with this famous Oannes, half fish, half human person holding this mysterious device, this mysterious handbag. It is interesting that they said that they haven't built the entire civilization, but they laid the foundations of these, first cities in ancient Mesopotamia. And, again, I connected it with this idea of, again, cyclopean megalithic walls all over the world, which are often only found in foundations of building, the famous Sacsayhuaman Peru megalithic architecture, the biggest rocks, the highest precision masonry, it's crazy. And it's always within the foundation or a little bit underground, like in Osirion in Egypt, almost the same masonry. Again, also at the bottom of the 3rd pyramid in Egypt of Menkaure, you can find the same thing. So, but again, it's only the foundation, and then on top of it, there are casual buildings, casual bricks, which are not that precise and everything. So I said, wait a minute, I see another connection. Again, these people with these mysterious handbags, which are again found in Mesoamerica, for instance, on the other side of the world, 7 sages are also mentioned in India. Maybe it's all about this lost history. And again, a few years ago when I was writing my book, I was speculating that, if we have so many mentions of teachers of mankind civilizing primitive human beings and showing them how to build civilization, even in some cases, like in the Persian Zend-Avesta, there are very, very descriptive mentions of that Yima went to primitive people and he says, and he teaches them, okay, you need to build a palisade wall, around your neighborhood. You need to build houses like that, but you also need to dig canals for, water to come to your crops. So these are very, descriptive things. The same with the Epic of Gilgamesh, Epic of Atrahasis. It's not like, okay, they were teachers of mankind, they taught humanity. No, it's, very, very precise knowledge. So I think if it's so precise, maybe it was important, maybe it was real memory. So again, another connection, I found that, maybe this, again, Cyclopean walls found all over the world. Maybe in ancient Mesopotamia, we don't find them within the Sumerian, architecture, Sumerian cities, because there was, again, mud. And there are plenty of layers even beneath everything. They used mud bricks because it was easiest for them, because there was tons of mud around in the Mesopotamian plain between the twin rivers. The word Mesopotamia is between the twin rivers, means in, I think, ancient Greek. So they didn't use that. But I see even right now in Poland here or in Eastern Europe, I remember visiting plenty of castles when I was a child. We have plenty of medieval or early medieval stuff. But right now, when I'm looking again or visiting these places or looking just at the pictures, I see, wait a minute, these megalithic foundations, these cyclopean walls can be found also here in Europe, and they were used, for instance, as the foundations of castles, of temples, of churches later, Catholic churches. So wait a second, it's everywhere. Asia, China, Japan, Burma, and plenty of other places all over the world. So I think that there is further connection with these teachers of mankind. And maybe you have something to... It's
well, as it relates
interesting.
to how advanced these ancient civilizations were, you can look towards the technology we have now and speculate that most likely what they were dealing with was much different, much more energetic based, in harmony with the planet. Again, depending on what researcher you're asking, they will tell you different levels of advancement, different levels of understanding as far as science and mathematics, but some speculate that they had extremely great knowledge of the sciences up to a point of possibly being able to manipulate DNA, clone different humans or animals. What do you think about that?
Yes, I will come to cloning in a bit because it's a huge topic connected to further conspiracy theories in ancient Sumer already 4,000 years ago at least. But let's start with this idea, of spiritual science. And I think that yes, and even in plenty of texts like the Hindu Yugas, which are one of the oldest, it is one of the oldest concept of cyclical time found already in Mahabharata, one of the, again, most ancient texts, that there are different ages. There is the famous Kali Yuga, dark material age, but during these golden ages the spirituality is in the fullest. People are not much taking care about the material world, etc. So I think that this idea is prevalent in plenty of cultures, that in the past everything was more spiritual. Even in Mahabharata there are descriptions that people were so psychic in these legendary mythical times that there is physically blind person and he remote views something, modern wording of course, but he sees a battlefield miles away, and he's in this battlefield looking how the battle is happening, so like remote viewing this place. And I think that everything, it's my own conspiracy theory about, again, the elites in connection to the recent Epstein stuff, that there is a conspiracy to hide from casual people their spirituality, their spiritual potential, because I believe personally there is much more than just material life, that we are just much more than just biological machines at the apex of evolution on our planet. But I think that this knowledge, and you can check this with plenty of remote viewers, people having mystical experiences, that we, as soul beings, as something higher, are indestructible. We cannot be controlled. We have free will. No one can get us into a cage, etc. And you can find it in plenty, of different sources, even ancient sources, metaphysical ones, maybe channeling, personal experiences of people to near-death experience, out-of-body experiences. And I think that there is an ongoing conspiracy, and you see that, in the modern world with hedonism, so, focusing on pleasures, fast food, focusing on social media, scrolling, dopamine, etc. And I think it's all about, hindering human potential, his spiritual one, for it to, because humans become just biological, again, machines. We say, oh, it's just evolution. And then the next step, I think, would be transhumanism, that, okay, if people are convinced that, okay, we're just biological machines, why not upgrade ourselves into robotics to have something better? And then they can completely trap us and slave us, because let's say right now we believe, again, we're spiritual beings, we can escape at any time. Our bodies, let's say I will die, and or mystical experience or something, and our souls, let's say, can escape. I don't believe 100% in Earth being a prison. I think we are much more powerful, and there are plenty even of ancient texts telling that it's another illusion that some people and some souls maybe being limited go into, and they are trapped in this reincarnation cycle. But I believe that at the bigger level it is not like that we are free from that. And I think that with transhumanism the biggest danger would be that if they control our our bodies. It's, they can completely, overload us, just as with dopamine, or just as we can be as humans sometimes very animalistic. So I think that they can completely then control us, and then we would be in a prison of some sorts as spirits, because maybe they were, not let us live this place for next hundreds of years, because they were trapped us in this robotic, half biological machines bodies. And who knows, right now we can escape, we die, everyone dies, and our souls probably go somewhere, maybe into another body, maybe not. But again, it's escape. But what if, all of this transhumanism is for, the elites, again, harvesting maybe spiritual energy to trap us. And we can, and there are actually a few channelings about that, some races on some planets in our solar system were trapped by AI or something, or robots. And then for tens of thousands of years, they were trapped, and they finally escaped, or someone, from the outer space came and saved them and let their souls free. There are stories like that, and I think that they are, again, possible in many cases. And I think that throughout the millennia, my own conspiracy theory is from, being fully spiritual as people in primitive again, societies, then into the first religions, forced. And again, they had mixed spirituality, because people were psychic again back then still, so they couldn't say, oh, there is only materialism, because people were having intuitive thoughts. And even historians and psychologists say that by analyzing ancient texts and plenty of ancient sources, they see that humans back there were like more in tune with nature, and they didn't see this separation between themselves and what was around them, all the stories of spirits, ghosts, etc. The same with ancient Sumer, ancient Greece, and many others. So I think that first it was, mingling falsehoods with, spirituality with the first religions. It evolved from polytheism. We again limit much more to monotheism. There are no other gods beside, the main one, and then other kind of thing is, stupid, etc. And then finally, scientific revolution. Right now, we are probably at the finish of this, stage when it's all about atheism, materialism, rationalism, and plenty of people are convinced into that. Fortunately, also spirituality grew, I think, in the last 20 or 30 years. Even this new age spirituality, whatever, if it has some falsehoods or not, I do not believe in everything, of course, but I think it's cool that people that even they just think that there is much more than physical reality. And then we are at the state that we are denying it. Science says no, there is nothing, we're just biological machines, there is no evidence. Atheism, scientism, and then the next step that is incoming, maybe right now, it's transhumanism, and that could end very, very bad, with completely enslaving us.
As far as the ability to clone, you were going to speak to that.
Yes, let's go into that. I could say that, already, because, again, people are telling, when they are nowadays waking up to, this conspiracy theories, again, in the brackets, because I want, people to know what we are talking about, in this, reality, how they are often called. When people are waking up to these ideas, they were, we are in the prison, we are in the matrix, we are in that, we're in that, there is, genetic manipulation, etc. But what I found out, and what even gave me a little lighter touch on that we are not the first with these problems, is that thousands of years ago, people had the same problems. Depopulation, New World Order by the elites. It's crazy that, for instance, Epic of Atrahasis, from about 1800 BC, so about 4,000 years ago, already says that, first there were gods, this famous Anunnaki, then they created the first robots to work for them, but the robots were not enough, so they created humanity. And, they created humanity that, again, if we talk about genetic manipulation, hybridization, and stuff like that, they initially created humanity that was immortal, or almost immortal. The people could be killed, but genetically they weren't aging, and their longevity was much more than of basic humans. And you see that reflected in the famous, what we said, Sumerian kings is telling that people, different rulers lived for tens of thousands of years. You see that it's the same story in the Bible, that before the Great Flood, the famous people in the Bible like Enoch and others lived for hundreds of years. Enoch, Lamech, Seth, and others for hundreds. And then with the flood, God after the flood said that, okay, we will cap the humanity, limit their lifespan to 120 years. It's the same with the Epic of Gilgamesh and Epic of Etrahasis in ancient Sumer, at least 1,000 years before the Bible was written down, that after this destruction, which I'll come to, they limited the, lifespan of humanity by, plenty of times. And you see also that reflected in ancient Egyptian, myths and legends. There are also lists of kings, and before the recorded history, people lived much longer, for maybe not tens of thousands of years, but at least thousands of years or a few hundred years. You see that reflected in all over the world. In India, famous people also lived for tens of thousands of years. I don't know how about Mesoamerica, because not many sources from Mesoamerica unfortunately survived, but this is, a universal theme that with the catastrophe, in the old world, people lived longer and then they were capped. I would say, again, it was something to do with our genes, manipulation of humanity. Because, okay, let's come back to the story of Epic of Etrahasis. What it's all about? It's about the flood. But again, first, humans live very long and they are just slaves for the gods in this text. And humans, because they are not capped by, their longevity, start to be very irritating to the elites, to the gods. And we see parallels to that nowadays, that there is overpopulation. And again, it is said that there's overpopulation. So what the elites are doing, because, they said that, oh, they are so irritating, so loud, these humans, we want to, get rid of them. So first, they give people famines. They give people water shortages. And there are, and this is not just a single mention. It is, hundreds of lines of text about it. And it is so, again, descriptive, as in the previous cases I mentioned, that, there are even mentions that, father ate his daughter, or father ate daughter of his neighbor. So people were, in such a state. And it shows also ingenuity and, survival skills of humans, that they still survived. And, after the famine and after everything, after years of that, they were again going into overpopulation. And, the gods were even more irritated by them. And there are pandemics also mentioned, different ones. And then finally they say, okay, nothing can destroy completely and we cannot get rid of this humanity. Let's get this great deluge, global flood, and let's completely destroy them. And one of the elites, rebels, I think it is Enki, but I don't remember if it was Enki or Ea, rebels, and the gods want to destroy humanity, and he appears to the title Atrahasis, the famous hero of the flood, and he says, but what's also interesting is that everything, all of this, because we think, okay, these gods, because we know from later history, were some like huge beings, giants, who are so powerful, but actually, in the Epic of Etrahasis, they are not very powerful. They may, give the pandemic or set the great flood to happen, but they are not authority over humans. They are like shadow people to some extent, because this, god Enki, or I think it was Enki, when he comes to Etrahasis, he's not coming him, in the flesh, because we could think that, okay, the god came to hear Etrahasis, you stupid person, I'm powerful, build an ark or something. No, he comes into Etrahasis' dreams, and even it shows his low authority over people, because he shows repeatedly in his dreams. And he is not like, even, maybe twice, no, he's, night after night showing up in his dream and saying him mantra. So again, his authority is low, because it would be just once needed for him to say, to tell Atrahasis to build an ark, but he's saying him a mantra every night: destroy your house, build an ark, destroy your house, build an ark. And after a few nights he does that, and that's how everything, how humanity is saved. And it's basically the Noah story, and Atrahasis and a few people survived, and that's kickstart of civilization. But again, after this flood, it is said that Etrahasis, or in other version, Utnapishtim Jushudra, there are different names of the same flood story hero. Okay, these gods say, we let you, because you are, you did a good job, you are heroic, okay, we will have also respect for you. You will again live forever as people in the past. But everyone after you will have, his longevity capped to just like other human beings right now. But also it is mentioned similar to the Garden of Eden story. So we are taking a little bit, coming back, but it is said that not only human lifespan will be capped, but also, women giving birth to children, it would be very painful, and, babies would die more often than casually. They will have less babies than before. Also, people will experience more pain, and they will need to work all the time to survive. So it's not only about capping the longevity, but also about, painfulness, about, changing everything, just as in the Bible, capping after the flood, the lifespan, or before in the Garden of Eden already, making people suffer more. So I say that, already these conspiracy theories were thousands of years old. About 4,000 years ago, they were already there, the same problems. And later, everything, as I say, cyclical. That's why Deja Vu has everything already been about cyclicality of history and, of all these ideas, all of these archetypes, even metaphorically speaking. In the middle of the time between nowadays and 4,000 years ago, Epic of Atrahasis, about at the beginning of our current era, 2,000 years ago, we have the famous Gnostics, like the Sethians, who were also worried about, New World Order, about the flood, and about everything. And they started these conspiracy theories about what if Noah was the bad guy, and what if, Noah survived the flood because he had a pact with the devil, with the bad god Yahweh, and they were called Sethians because they believed that, all the rest of the humanity was like from the Noah's lineage of bad people. And Noah was given by the devil, okay, you will be the only person surviving the flood, but you need, to be my slave, and I will tell you what to do. So, this is the theory that already 2,000 years ago, that the elites, people ruling us are, having pact with the devil or bad guys. Maybe they are again living longer than casual humans, just as in the case of Atrahasis, and that, they are just ruling people, and, someone from above is, making all the decisions. But what is also interesting, that they believe that, all are bad guys. I think you will need to not to get banned a little bit, censor us, but it's all about what we call anti-Semitic today, that, there are the bad guys, actually, I don't say their name, but you know what I mean. And other casual people, goyim, as some people call them nowadays, these are actually neutral or good people who were from the third son of Adam and Eve, Seth. That's why they were called Sethians. And they're the good people who also survived the flood, but by their own means, with, no God to help them. So Noah was helped by the God, and that's how he survived, and because of that he needed to have a pact with the devil. But other people from the third son of Adam and Eve, Seth, are the good people. They also survived. So we see that everything nowadays, all this even political stuff that it's there in the media, all these conspiracy theories, it's already been thousands of years ago. That's why I'm not trying to denounce, of course, conspiracy theories, but I say that when you learn that, you are much more lightly hearted to that it's not, okay, these are big issues and we should, face them, and we should, try to get everything the best. But also, we should never go into despair, oh, it's over, oh, we lost or something. No, because I think that this is what these, elites, evil people want us to be hopeless, say, oh, we cannot do anything, it's over. And I think that when you learn that it's already been thousands of years ago, you are much more positive about that. If people back then survived that, if they had the same problems, maybe there is also hope for us in the near future.
Going back to as it relates to scientific knowledge and abilities that our ancient ancestors had, many attribute the DNA tinkering, the capping of our lifespan to the quote-unquote gods. I wonder if it's not humans that were given information, maybe by a spiritual source, about the sciences, and then they carried out the experimentation, agendas, the actual tinkering of humans was done by other humans. Whether the information came from an outside source or not, who knows? But as far as things like tinkering with DNA and cloning Do you think that is something that humans had the ability to do?
Yeah, probably, but also I will start with this idea. You said that some kind of source, non-physical, for instance, source. And what I found out, in my opinion, most of these gods, famous Anunnaki, teachers of mankind, I think that these beings were not completely physical. Because the same, if the Anunnaki were so strong, why would this god come to Atrahasis' dream and repeat a mantra? Because he was, just as we sometimes dream about some ghosts or some angels or something. So he was also not flesh and blood being that came to him. The same with plenty of other, like from Amazon rainforest mentions that who taught these people basics. They say that, gods of the jungle, and they appear to them and show them how to create the famous ayahuasca and stuff like that. So I think, lots of knowledge was in the ancient past, and I think lots of the gods mentioned, in the ancient texts, like in the Egyptian ones, when they are half human, half different beings. I think that they may even, appear like that okay, this god has a head of an ibis or something, but these were not 100% physical beings. It's my personal opinion, and I think the best way to show it is to, out of body experience, near-death experiences, even hallucinatory experiences like taking ayahuasca, DMT, LSD, and other people very often show similar things. And I think it's, the easiest way to scientifically prove that is to, show experiments, and there have been a few of this kind that, get the different people, get them to, this altered states of consciousness and see what they are, seeing there. And if you see similarities between these people, okay, you see that there is something going on. But again, let these people ask these beings questions that they cannot have knowledge on, like something very advanced, something out of their paradigm. And if there's something new and something that could be replicated in the physical world and it turns out to be true, you can see that, it's much more than hallucinations. So this is about, this part, that this knowledge was, imparted by, non-physical beings and stuff like that. And I believe so. And the same when it comes to, physical changes in our DNA. I don't know, maybe even because we see, for instance, even scientifically, that there are biophotons, that our DNA emits light, and that different kinds of waves can have different impact on the DNA. I don't know if the humans manipulated our genes, or maybe they were spiritual beings. I don't know, 100%, and probably will never know, or not very soon. But what I mean is that it's very possible, and from what I know from DNA and from what we know about genes, it's very easy to show. For instance, there are telomeres which cap our longevity, and if we found a way to lengthen the telomeres or not let them completely be destroyed, we could have biological, bodies like we have that are not terminated by, are not dying in hundreds of years or something. It's possible, even, science is telling us like that. There are also plenty of other things about our genes that, single gene expressions can cause you to be, to get more muscle very easily, even without working much out. And we see even from people that some people have predispositions to be better at that and better at this sport, etc. So there's even huge potential within our genes, and it's easily accessible. We see, for instance, if I don't sleep this night or sleep for just 2 hours, plenty of genes will express differently because it's survival adaptation. They will change, and we know that very well. If hundreds or even thousands of genes will change, so they are changing all the time, the expression of the genes. But there are also different kinds of genomes in different people, some like harder gene stuff, because expression is if they are turning on or off or this or that and stuff like that. So there is huge potential, and I think everything is possible. That before the Great Flood or some cataclysm, people lived much longer, and we can prove that genetically, biologically, even physically, materialistically. We do not need some crazy conspiracy theories, but I believe it could have been done both. With, I don't know, there are now this CRISP technology to change directly DNA, physically with some technology, but also the DNA can be changed by radiation, by some waves. So I think that if these elites were in the Epic of Atrahasis, for instance, shadowy figures who were not appearing before the humans as flesh and blood beings, and if they were giving them, different famines, different pandemics, I think that they very well could have done it by some kinds like HARP technology or something, completely not like, okay, I will inject into you something or manipulate your DNA. They even didn't need to do that, and we see more evidence that it can be done, that you can, remotely change this person's DNA and stuff like that. And it's very interesting also, you asked about hybridization, and in plenty of channelings, especially about Atlantis, like Edgar Cayce. But also in Plato, what is interesting, it's mentioned that the Atlanteans and their fall was because they used hybridization for their own like animalistic purposes, like sexual or something, stuff like that. What is interesting is, my friend author Michael F. Flem, and we'll be talking about that, I've spoken with him already, so don't know unfortunately plenty of information, but he says that in the Edgar Cayce files there are mentions of something like Epstein, that there, everything has already been. The same as in my book, I found that, history repeats itself. So I wouldn't be surprised that, similar things were happening already even tens of thousands of years ago. And I believe so that, it is cyclical, and some bad things, maybe some bad karma or something like that needs to be, happen again. And from what I describe for everyone, listening and wondering at the end of my book is that the same people like Hitler and Hannibal in ancient Rome, same situation, the same kinds of wars, but different nations. These are the same motives, we could say the same energies, the same archetypes behind how it happens. But it can happen in completely different, environments and scenarios. So it doesn't mean that Atlantis was 100% copy of the modern world. No, but just, similar archetypes, similar motives were happening already, similar problems, just as we've said with, similar problems with conspiracy theories with Gnostics, with Atrahasis are happening. All it's being played out just, as in the theater, just as we find that in most of the biggest like literature works or the biggest films, we see the same motives of like a hero's journey and something. And I think that it all happens also here, again, here on Earth. It's all a big grand theater with different kinds of scenarios and different kinds of things happening again. So this is very interesting. But coming back also to Plato, to connect that with known historical sources, Plato is telling us that the Atlantis fell because people start behaving like animals. Which is very interesting. So they started to be more primitive, just in the case of the famous Kali Yuga, that everything is becoming, they're mentioned, more material, less spiritual. So Plato is telling us almost the same thing. The same with the famous fall of humanity in the Bible, that humans had this sin and they fell from the heavens, and they became after that more and more physical. So I think that all of that is connected and shows us that there are different cycles, and it doesn't mean that our times are much worse and the golden age is the best. No, because even I very often called the instructions manual, these, for instance, yugas, how to live on Earth in particular times, just as astrology can help us, okay, this season, this period of time will be good for work, and will be good for love, something like that. On the basic understanding, of course, I think that these are all, guides for us. For instance, we live in these times. Some people say it's Kali Yuga, some say it's not, but, the Yuga system is telling you that Kali Yuga is in no way worse than the Krita Satya Yuga, so the Golden Age. It's just about, different kinds of environments. It can be, in plenty of cases, better, because if right now we would be 100% psychic and we could know all the information, our life could be completely different. We wouldn't have these illusions we are living in, going to work or, just, talking, because we even wouldn't need to talk. We could do everything psychically, or even we wouldn't research anything because we would immediately know the truth. So it's not that these times are bad, it's like, I would say, video game to some extent, that there are different levels, and okay, I want to play this level on hard mode, and another time I want to just chill out, I will choose easy mode and stuff like that. So I think it's all connected with everything.
Last few minutes, you mentioned the pyramids earlier. I'd love to get your thoughts on some of the recent discoveries based on the scans underground that they've recently made, the speculation that is coming out about what this could possibly be. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure about, this miles and miles beneath the pyramids. So, but I'm open that it can be right, but, we haven't found even more evidence to prove that besides these scans, and there are plenty of controversies around the scans, but I say, okay, it may be real. No denying that at all. And I think that people doing this research are doing very good job, trying to understand it more and more and to do something about that. But what is interesting is that even a few years ago, when I was speaking about, there were theories about, again, other scans. It was like Myon scans that showed some kind of secret chambers, huge chambers in the Great Pyramid of Giza. This were, again, it's controversial and stuff like that. But last year, even Zahi Hawass himself said that, yes, these are real chambers and we will go this year, he said, into these chambers and look what's inside them. So, again, conspiracy theories are turning out to be right, so I wouldn't be surprised that the scans are real. What is also interesting is already in the 90s and before, we found there are plenty of underground shafts on the entire Giza Plateau, not just under the pyramids, because the Giza Plateau is actually big, and we found a few of them which are, I would say, very, very impressive, like the Osiris shaft, not discovered but later cleaned by Zahi Hawass because there was water, and it's a shaft in solid rock that comes straight, I don't know, a few meters or tens of meters. So it goes very, very deep. Then there is one level, huge level, with something that looks like the famous Serapeum sarcophagi, these huge granite boxes. There aren't that huge in this place, but it's almost the same. So shaft coming straight down, then first level, and then another shaft coming down, and the final level beneath that. And it's in solid rock, and we found one of them. There are other, like these, maybe not that big, but, there are tons of stuff probably under the Giza Plateau. So I wouldn't be surprised that at least to some extent what, this research, this SAR scan showed, under the pyramids is right. I also think it may be connected because even physicists a few years ago found, not like conspiracy theories, but casual academic physicists found out that because the pyramids are so huge, they are made out of, they have granite and diorite core, which is, full of quartz and other materials like that. It is accumulating energy. I don't know what exactly it is, but even physically they show that it is accumulating energy. And I think to myself, it may be connected with, maybe this energy is coming underground, and that's why these scans showed you these huge spirals, meters, miles deep under the pyramids, because maybe they're real, maybe not, maybe this is this energy, which is being accumulated in the Great Pyramid. I see plenty of possibilities, and in my opinion, looking even at the mythology of the Egyptians, the pyramids were used, these coffins for people, and right now it's very interesting, again, conspiracy theories are turning out to be right. More and more people, I think even this Filippo Biondi from the Swiss on Joe Rogan said that he also believes that. I also, from years been proponent of this theory that people were put into this sarcophagus, let's say, this box, granite box in the Great Pyramid, and it was for some kind of spiritual stuff, like out-of-body experience, near-death experience, astral travel, remote viewing, something like that. And you see that the Egyptians believed that, our spiritual side is made from a few things like soul, like baka, different, not like just one soul and body. And they believed that one part of the soul was being shot straight, when it comes to the pyramids, because we have this pyramid shafts at Orion Belt, and the Giza alignment is all about the Orion, that part of the soul was being shot at this Orion Belt, and this Orion Belt was some kind of portal, like maybe outside of the simulation matrix. So I think it wasn't for the dead, but I see it's also connected that not 100% of the academic theories about the pyramid is wrong, because academics say it was for dead people, for the soul of the pharaoh to come out, and we say it was for alive people. So we have the same ground, but different interpretation, because science isn't believing in remote viewing or something and thinks Egyptians believe that if we put the dead body there, so then the soul would finally come out of it or something like that. But we see that it may be for bodies, but alive bodies. So I think that, again, we live in crazy times, and I think think there is more and more positive things going on again with these conspiracy theories and stuff like that, because a few years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it was mostly David Icke stuff and others, very negative. People were about all of that. Okay, David Icke also said that we are very powerful human beings, but I see that everything is coming out, for just casual public, the SARS scan going viral, on the entire planet, the recent Epstein files and stuff like that. It's all coming to an end, maybe an end of Kabul or something.
I've heard recent theories about the construction of the pyramid as opposed to them dragging stones across hundreds or thousands of miles over the desert. They were building them themselves by using some kind of material that could be melted down and molded into the blocks. I found that really interesting. What do you think about that?
Yes, similar legend. So before modern theories was found in the famous, megalithic architecture of Peru and the entire Andes, that there was a legend that there was a plant and mixture of a particular plant with something melted the stones, so that's why they were so perfect. And when it comes to the pyramid, I don't believe that they were 100%, like created out of concrete or something. I don't believe like that, but I think it's very possible, because we also see huge precision within the pyramids and we know, for instance, a few blocks, we can check that some interior blocks like granite and diorite, we know that was taken from a quarry a few hundred miles away from the Giza. So at least few blocks were being taken there, but I think it's very possible, as you said, that maybe, they took the blocks. And there are even mainstream theories about, famous water pump theory, but it was theory, conspiracy theory back in the days. But right now there is one of the mainstream theories about the building of the pyramids, that the Egyptians, used water all along to the side of the Great Pyramid and other pyramids of Giza, and there was, huge water reservoirs there, and, they pushed the stones by hydraulics, by different kind of water levels. So even it's coming again into the mainstream, but I think that there is huge possibility that they could have used something to melt the stones, to fit them together, because again, the precision is extraordinary in these sites.
Right on. Alexander, always fascinating information. Before I let you go, remind the audience how they can get all your content.
I think the best way is just copy and paste my name and surname, Aleksander Czeszkiewicz, and you will find me on plenty of other podcasts also in English, plenty of social media, and I also have Polish social media, so check these in which everything is in English. This will be, my English social media, and my book is Deja Vu, has everything already been, and you can find it on Amazons worldwide, US, UK, Canada, Australia, and a few more. And, in this book I provide you with tons of, even illustrations, images, that show plenty of the things I'm writing about, but there's, tons of stuff in the book, so I highly recommend you checking out, with sources, footnotes. I try to show that it's not only conspiracy theory, but it's all based on facts and on sources. Thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed this conversation.
I did too, man. Always a fun discussion. We'll be doing it again for sure. Until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. Hello, friends. I am so excited to tell you about Independent Media Token. Independent Media Token is a brand new way to show your support for independent media without having to donate a dime. Independent Media Token is a cryptocurrency on the Solana blockchain designed to generate funds to promote and foster the growth of independent content creators, allowing them to engage in their art without having to worry about being demonetized. Through a network of media partners, of which you yourself can become a part of, Independent Media Token's goal is to ensure the powers that be can never cut off all of our areas of funding and censor the only free voices left in the world. Join the movement today. You can pick up Independent Media Token using Phantom Wallet or the Solana wallet of your choice, where you can easily swap your Solana for IMT. Grab some IMT today and remember to always know your team. To learn more, visit independentmediatoken.com or use the link right in the description. If you're looking to start your therapeutic microdosing journey, but don't know where to start, especially when looking for the highest quality ingredients, including nootropics, and what you'd expect from a true microdose capsule, check out our friends at Brainsupreme. They offer the absolute highest quality ingredients so you can start your microdosing journey knowing that you're getting top-notch ingredients. To find out more, visit their website using that link right in the description, and you can get 15% off your entire order. Are you and your family prepared for an emergency? Maybe the fake alien invasion? Now is the time to prepare yourself and your family for any event. Check out Prep Starts Now. Their mission is to provide high-quality preparedness products that empower individuals and families to be ready for any situation. They're committed to delivering reliable, trusted gear to ensure your safety, security, and peace of mind in times of need. Their product selection is carefully curated to provide you with the essential gear you need to stay prepared. From emergency kits to tactical tools, every item is chosen for its reliability and practicality. Prep Starts Now understands the importance of family, and their goal is to equip you with everything you need to build a solid plan for your family's preparedness. In today's ever-changing world, being prepared is more important than ever, and Prep Starts Now is here to help you and your family stay ready with quality products and practical guidance. Use the link in the description and get 15% off your order.